A controversial book alleged to be the memoir of Sean Diddy Combs' former girlfriend shocked the internet. But according to those who knew and loved the mom of four, they were quick to slam the so-called memoir, which has since been removed from Amazon in light of the backlash. Now, weeks after it was taken off the proverbial shelves, Kim Porter's best friend is coming to her defense, slamming allegations made by a grand jury witness in Sean Combs' federal sex trafficking case. The witness, Courtney Burgess, claimed he was a former associate of Kim Porter. He alleged he received a manuscript from Porter's alleged memoir on a flash drive, which has since been turned over to federal investigators. But LaWanda Lane, who is Kim Porter's best friend of 30 years and has been caring for her twin daughters she shares with Combs since his arrest in September, says Porter never tried to write a book. Lane told TMZ she and Porter lived under the same roof for 2 decades, and there was never a manuscript written by her. According to Lane, the two used to be together every day, and Porter never wrote anything down, and claims the family doesn't know who Courtney Burgess is, despite him claiming he was a former associate of the model. Lane says she was in charge of going through Porter's belongings and distributing them to family and friends after she died in 2018, and says if anyone would have found a manuscript, it would have been her. This isn't the first time the alleged memoir has come under fire. The book, which was released on Amazon and ultimately titled Kim's Lost Words, A Journey for Justice from the Other Side, was also slammed by Porter's children. In a joint statement from her kids Quincy Brown, Christian, Delilah, and Jesse Combs, which was released in late September, they wrote in part, quote, "Claims that our mom wrote a book are simply untrue. She did not, and anyone claiming to have a manuscript is misrepresenting themselves. Additionally, please understand that any so-called friend speaking on behalf of our mom or her family is not a friend, nor do they have her best interest at heart," end quote. But for Burgess, that's not the only allegation he's made to the press regarding the Bad Boy Records founder's case. Last week, a federal grand jury heard new evidence as a part of the ongoing investigation into Combs. According to Burgess, who testified in front of the grand jury last week, he claimed to have been in possession of videos that allegedly contained footage of celebs being potentially victimized by the hip-hop mogul. Burgess hasn't filed any suits against Combs and is not claiming to be a victim of him, but said he had information and evidence about sexual abuse and other misconduct by Combs, some of which allegedly involved celebrities. His attorney, Ariel Mitchell, who also represented 2 of Combs' accusers in their lawsuits against the mogul, said her client was subpoenaed to testify. According to reports, the subpoena from federal prosecutors asked the witness to turn over all records, including thumb drives, hard drives, electronic storage devices, or devices containing videos and/or other files depicting Combs. But then he dropped another bombshell, claiming he was given nearly a dozen flash drives containing at least 8 sex tape involving 8 celebrities, 6 men and 2 women. Last week, Burgess told News Nation's Banfield among the 8 celebrities who were Combs' alleged victims, about 2 to 3 appeared to be minors. During his interview with News Nation, Burgess told Ashley Banfield in a joint interview with his attorney Ariel Mitchell, every celebrity appeared to be under the influence in the alleged tapes and were seemingly victims, not perpetrators. But Burgess's statements have seemingly rubbed Combs' attorneys the wrong way, as now they're looking to restrict statements from witnesses who have testified against the mogul. In a letter to Judge Arun Subramanian, Combs' defense team requested an immediate gag order. The letter referred to an unnamed grand jury witness and his attorney alleging video evidence of the mogul's alleged sexual assaults. The letter said in part, quote, "These stories have spread rapidly through the media and created the impression that such videos exist, which is false, and that the government is actually crediting his sensational claims, which is profoundly prejudicial. While the witness and his attorney eagerly spread false and unchecked claims in the media, they have avoided subjecting their claims to verification through the legal process. For instance, the witness and his lawyer admitted that he resisted complying with the grand jury subpoena and only appeared after the marshals tracked him down. And when directly asked if they had the videos to back up their outlandish claims, the attorney responded, "That's what we're going to head over to do now. So we're having a hearing now to determine what we're going to do in terms of what documents we will have to turn over and what documents we do not. By treating these ridiculous claims as anything but a pathetic extortion scheme, the government is fueling the fire of online conspiracy theories and making it impossible for Mr. Combs to have a fair trial," end quote. While Combs' attorneys wait for a response, Combs remains locked up in a federal detention center in Brooklyn. Let's unpack this with attorney Melba Piera. Melba, it's always great to see you. There's been so much controversy surrounding this alleged memoir. Kim Porter's family and even her best friend are adamant she never wrote this book and there's no manuscript. However, this grand jury witness, Courtney Burgess, says there is a manuscript and he turned over the flash drive to the feds. What do you make of this whole saga regarding the memoir?
Yeah, that's definitely a bombshell revelation because, first of all, he's saying this in the context of his testimony as part of building this case against Diddy. So there's that aspect to it. There's the allegation that Kim Porter, the ex girlfriend or ex partner, excuse me, of Diddy, turned over flash drives that included brutality and sexual acts being committed on minors. And then now you have this potential manuscript where she's allegedly detailing that these weren't isolated incidents, that he had been violent towards her and had done horrible, horrible things to her during the course of their relationship. So this would be sort of the smoking gun in a lot of ways to show that this wasn't a one off and that these aren't all people seeking publicity and money, but that he has had a history of violence, violence against women, violence against people generally, and that he has a predilection for deviant sexual behavior. And we know that that didn't just pop up overnight. This is something that happened over time, over years, over decades. And if Kim Porter was there for the majority of it and was able to chronicle that in real time, that's going to be huge evidence for the prosecution.
And Burgess, he claims that he was an associate of Kim Porter, but her best friend of 30 years says she has no idea who he even is. What does that mean in terms of his credibility, as it feels like it's kind of playing into a he said, she said, they said type of story?
What it always comes down to for me is what the evidence says. And can you corroborate what you're saying? So if he is saying that I was an associate of Kim Porter during this time, and if he could produce pictures of them at events together, if he can produce certain things that she may have said to him that could have been verified based on the time frame when it was said. So if she said, we went to this party and he punched me afterwards, and he saw her the next day with a black eye, and another friend can corroborate she also had a black eye, but maybe told a different story, that lends more credibility to what he's saying. Just because of the fact the best friend doesn't know who he is doesn't mean they were never in contact. It could be, again, if Kim Porter maybe was enduring a lot of abuse, she may not have been ready to tell her friend, but may have been ready to tell someone else. Or maybe she had told her friend too much already, and her friend had been saying, girl, you need to leave him. And she hadn't done that, and she didn't want to keep going back to the well and saying those things to her friend. So there could be a million explanations as to why the friend was not aware of Kim Porter's association with this particular witness. And one of the reasons could be that he never really knew her. I'm not discounting that as a possibility. But again, there could be a number of reasons why the best friend was not aware of this person.
And are you surprised Burgess has been speaking to the press given that he testified before the grand jury last week? We don't know exactly what he testified about at this point, but he's been vocal not just about the alleged memoir, but also about these alleged sex tapes involving Diddy and other celebrities, some of which he alleges were minors at the time of these recordings, alleged recordings.
So sadly, he is really starting to corroborate a lot of what we've already been hearing. It feels like every other day we're learning about a 17-year-old victim, a 10-year-old victim. So we're hearing all these stories. We've got attorney Tony Busby coming out almost daily with new survivors that he's representing. And now you have this third person saying, as a matter of fact, I could verify that these things were happening and I was privy to these acts, so I know that these people are telling the truth. All of these different aspects together, starting all the way with Cassie, going to Little Rod, and all of these folks speaking out are really going to create a very perfect storm for Diddy to end up serving the rest of his life in prison.
And, the defense, they want a gag order on this case so Combs can get a fair trial. I got a two-part question for you. Do you think a gag order should be issued? And at this point, do you think Combs can get a fair trial?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I am never a fan of gag orders. As a prosecutor, I'm a fan of them from that perspective, but as a civil rights person and a believer of the First Amendment and the ability to report on these issues, and the fact that by the story being so widely reported, it's emboldening more survivors to come forward. And so to me, it's important for those people to be able to get justice, and having a gag order may prevent other people from coming forward so that they can claim the justice that they need. So there's that aspect. Now, the second aspect as to whether or not he could get a fair trial, I don't know from the beginning if he was ever going to be able to get a fair trial from the standpoint of he is so widely known. I mean, we think about, for instance, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. That was, a civil case. Obviously, the jury had to put aside the celebrity of both parties to come to a verdict in terms of what civil damages should be granted to whom. So there is a pathway to that. But in a criminal case, it's just a lot tougher because of the fact that the defendant's liberty, or the person charged, their liberty is on the line. So there could be a scenario where this case would be pulled from, currently, I believe he's being housed in one of the 5 boroughs. It could be pulled from New York City proper and maybe tried in Buffalo, or someplace in upstate New York where it's not necessarily someplace where people saw him on a regular basis at nightclubs or at restaurants, or that people could have run into him, or that he was part of the fabric in a lot of ways of the community. So that's a possibility. But again, he's P. Diddy. He's internationally famous. I'm not quite sure there's anywhere he can go where no one's going to recognize him. But the key in making sure the trial is fair is in voir dire and jury selection, asking the potential jurors, can you put aside who this person is and listen to the evidence? Do you already have your mind made up as to the guilt or innocence, or lack of guilt, of this particular person? If the jurors can answer yes, they can put his fame aside, and yes, they can keep an open mind and listen to the evidence, and no, they do not have any preconceived notions with regards to whether or not he committed the crime, that's going to be a juror that can sit on the case.
Let's just play a little hypothetical here. Say the Kim Porter manuscript is real. In terms of the overall case, and you kind of were talking about it earlier during our conversation, in terms of the overall case, do you think it's even important to the federal investigation given that Kim Porter can't even be called as a witness?
Well, unfortunately, Kim Porter is no longer with us, having passed away several years ago. But I think that that book could still be used as a point of corroboration in terms of finding out who some of the other victims slash survivors may be, corroborating what some of the survivors may have said. So if she's able in her book to say that at X party, this is what happened, and I recall seeing a young woman around the age of 13 wearing a red dress. But I mean, hypothetical here, right? She's able to say something like that. And you actually do end up finding a survivor with a red dress who said, I was at that party, I was harmed, and this was what I was wearing on that date. That's corroboration. So that can help kind of buttress what the survivor is saying, and ensuring that they are, again, that you're not having people that are making up stories or seeking fame, but are truly survivors of Diddy and were truly harmed and violated by this person.
And assuming Courtney Burgess wasn't the only grand jury witness to testify during the hearing last week, do you think we could see a superseding indictment against Diddy come out anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely. I have no question that there will be a superseding indictment. The question is when. The question is when. Because again, as you're having so many people come forward, Attorney Busby's phone is just like ringing off the hook at this point. People keep just coming forward by the dozens, it seems like. And every other day, we just keep hearing about more and more and more horrible events involving children, right? Because let's be clear, if you're molesting a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, that is a child. There is no consent involved, period, end of story. That is a child. And those types of charges don't carry a statute of limitations. So it is distinctly possible that a superseding indictment could include more charges in terms of child sex trafficking or something along those lines. And that's, again, the federal case. That has nothing to do with state level charges. So the state of New York, state of California, if they're able to substantiate that there were survivors under a certain age, and you can put that evidence together and have the whole time frame set so that clearly it falls within the statute of limitations, if any, because again, it depends on the state and what their laws are. But if the states can pull cases together, you're going to see him not only have federal legal problems, but also state level legal problems. And that's just not going to be a good scenario for him, any which way you slice it.
And it seems like every week we're hearing and seeing more lawsuits come out, more allegations come out in a civil matter. Do you think we would be seeing this level of lawsuits come out against Diddy if he wasn't in jail right now? For example, if he was issued bail whenever he was first charged?
That's a good question. I do think there is that element of witness intimidation that could play into people being hesitant to speak out if he was out on bail. But also at the same token, though, there's that strength in numbers. So if you're still seeing a core group of survivors come forward and they are speaking out and not afraid of the fact that he's out of custody, I still think more survivors would have come forward. Maybe not the same amount, but I think more survivors would have come forward no matter how you cut it. So.
Right. I guess we'll have to wait and see as more information does come out. And as we get to learn more, we'll kind of have to wait and see, even though his case is still a few months away. Melba Pearson, thank you so much for your time today. But before we sign you off, anything else you'd like to add?
Again, I will always advocate for survivors of domestic violence and of sexual assault. There's resources available. Please get the help you need. There are people that believe you and will support you through this process.
All right, Melba Pearson, always great to see you. Always great to have you on. Thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. His high-profile trial is slated to begin on May 5th of 2025. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Milner.